Hi guys, it's Ross over at the Daily Jaws, and I'm here with another exclusive interview for the Jaws 2 45th anniversary celebrations. I am joined by Billy Van Sant, or as we all know him, Bob from Jaws 2. Billy, welcome to the Daily Jaws.
Thank you very much. Happy to be with you.
Oh, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show, sir. We have got dozens of questions for you. People really want to know about you, your experience making the movie, and of course, Bob. So, if it's all right, I'd love to dive in straight away with the first question.
Jump in. Go ahead.
So, the first question is the obvious one. Can you believe it's been 45 years since Jaws 2 was released?
I can when I look in the mirror. But other than that, no, I actually I keep in touch with most of the guys in the film, so it feels like we're all still together. Actually,
It's lovely to hear that. I was speaking to Gigi Vaughan, who played Brooke. I spoke to her yesterday, and she echoed exactly the same sentiments. That
oh,
even though the movie was made such a long time ago, you guys all sort of kept in touch, and some of you are even messaging on a daily basis, which is wonderful to hear.
it's funny. A
Um,
couple of years ago, Gigi, no, Tom Dunlop, who played Timmy, was coming out to Los Angeles, and he said, "I haven't seen you in a while. Let's have dinner." I said, "Great." I said, "I'm about to have dinner with Gigi Vorgan too. I'll call her and invite her along." And then I hung up the phone and I thought about it and I started making phone calls. And within 24 hours, every living member of the movie crew and the cast, we all got together in Westwood for dinner and we had a ball. Lorraine Gary, Sid Sheinberg came from Universal, uh,
wow.
director Janov Schwark, Carl Gottlieb. We had a great time, and it was like we had seen each other the day before. It was really fun.
That's incredible. I honestly I had no idea about that because obviously when you hear about people trying to reunite with actors from films they made years ago, I know that some of the people from Lord of the Rings still do it. And it might just be, a few key people who form special friendships in the moment during those movies. But obviously, you guys are almost like a family. You've all kind of come back within 24 hours notice, as you say. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, we were on that movie for 11 months, most of us, for 11 months.
Yeah.
So it almost became like the high school graduating class. So we all hung out together. Anyway,
Oh, that's wonderful. How did you get the role of Bob in Jaws 2?
that was my very first movie audition. I had started out in community theater doing plays, and I got a manager through that. And the manager sent me out on my very first movie audition. I've been doing theater, but this is the first movie audition. And they brought me back. I think I had about six callbacks, and remember the last one we were all together in, I think, the Hilton in New York, and they brought in all the different actors together, and we do improvs, and eventually, and then they asked us to do monologues, and I didn't have anything prepared for a monologue. So I pulled out a show I had just done called El Grande de Coca-Cola, which was mostly in Spanish,
Oh.
and I just winged it, and that was my audition. It had nothing to do with the role I played, but it was the audition.
So they didn't ask you to fake being attacked by a shark or anything like
No, that was
that.
we did that in Martha's Vineyard, though. We when the first director with John Hancock, we had a month of it was pretty great because you don't hear about doing this anymore. We had a month of rehearsal
Mm,
before we ever shot anything. And the first part of the day was calisthenics with Frank Sparks, an ex Navy SEAL who came in and killed us all to get us in shape. And then we went sailing. They taught us how to sail for the rest of the day till about 3 o'clock. And then at 3 o'clock, we met on the dock where they had taped out the boats, and we stood on our taped out boats and we rehearsed scenes. And it was kind of crazy, the shark's coming now, that kind of thing. But and then after about, I think we did about a week's worth of shooting on that film, and then they sent everybody home, and nobody knew what was going on.
mm,
I was just told to go home, and they would meet us. They'd call us when they needed us back. I didn't think anything of it. What I didn't know was they had fired John Hancock. They had fired Dorothy Tristan, his wife, the writer.
mm.
Um, they fired most of the cast. I think Ann Dusenberry, Keith Gordon, David Elliott, and me may have been the only holdovers from the first thing, maybe a couple more.
Mm.
And I just got a phone call saying, "Okay, you're going to Florida." So I go down to Florida to start shooting again. New director, Carl Gottlieb was there, right, rewriting the script, whole new cast of people. It was kind of wild. And what I didn't know is a lot of the actors had been asked to fly to California to audition again for the new director. I didn't know anything about that. I never did it. I
Oh
just got
wow.
David Brown, the producer, Zanuck and Brown. Um, he liked me for some reason, so
Mm.
I think I was saved by him. But it was my first time, and most of us, it was our first movies, so it was a big learning experience all around.
I was going to say Jaws 2 is a very unique sequel, very unique movie, and also a very unique sequel because we've spoken to John Hancock, we've spoken to Gigi, and we've
Oh,
spoken to Joe Alves already, and it seems to be that Jaws 2, forget the pressure of being a follow up, the first follow up to you know a, probably the greatest movie ever made, probably I think at the time still the most financially successful. So there's that sort of added pressure, to really try and do something right with the movie and not kill the franchise straight away. It's also very much an ensemble piece as well, because obviously with the original Jaws, you've got Robert Shaw, Roy Scheider, and Richard Dreyfuss as the three leads with a fantastic supporting cast. But then you've got 8 or 9 principal characters actually in this movie, and you're all kind of not necessarily jockeying for position, but you all need your own fair share of screen time so the characters can develop. So when things happen, we care.
hmm.
So, how did you, with all of sort of those things in mind, how did you approach the character of Bob, given what was sort of on the screen, or sorry, on the page in terms of the script, and obviously that new situation of new director, new vision, new story? How did you handle all of that?
It was very strange. I got to say, it was very strange. Originally, with John Hancock's movie was much darker. I think it would have
Mm,
been a great adult horror film. I really do. There are a couple of
yeah.
shots from his time with them that are still in the film.
Mm,
The fit coming up in the harbor at night outside the Holiday Inn,
yes.
that's from his, and you see the tone that the film is going to be. When it
Mm.
came time for the new cast, they we looked around the first. Keith Gordon and I hit it off right away, and we looked around and we went, "There's too many people in this movie," and we ran to the prop department. He was the first one to grab glasses, so I couldn't get those because I wanted to find something to distinguish ourselves. So who are you in the film? I'm the that guy. Nobody's not. So I grabbed the hat. I grabbed the gray
Yes.
hat. So, and that's sort of how. And we were jockeying for position the entire time, pretty much. But what they ended up doing is you sort of played a version of yourself
Mm,
because there was no script when we started. Carl Gottlieb, God love him, he came in and did the most impossible job. I'm a writer now, and the fact that I didn't appreciate this at the time, this was amazing. He
mm,
came in with no preparation, really. Maybe he and Janot had a month, as opposed to most directors have a year and a half or something to get their movie ready. They came in and winged it. And Carl would write whatever scene we were shooting the next day. He was in the hotel room the night before writing that scene, and it was you know amazing because unfortunately for him, every time he'd come out of the hotel room, everybody he passed, "How's it going, Carl? Hey, how's it going, Carl? How's it going, Carl?"
yeah, of
I want to
course.
blow my brains out if somebody did that to me. And and but he pulled it off. And there were a couple of scenes where we did improvs, like on the dock scene. I think I wrote a couple of scenes for people, and we just winged it. And eventually, after maybe 2 weeks or so, we sort of got into a groove. But I
Mm.
would love to go back and reshoot a bunch of my stuff because first time, and it's like, oh, that's bad. Oh, that's bad. But anyway, um, the the actors pretty much became themselves, and we had Carl would have lunches or dinners with us to try and get to know who we were. Suddenly,
Yeah.
we had dinner one night, and the next day I had a good punchline. It's like, oh, okay, you must have heard me talk. Uh, but he and Janot pulled off, and audiences don't care what went into making a film. They really don't. They just want to see a good film. But
Yeah.
if you really studied what those two guys did, you would appreciate that film so much more. You really would. It was impossible what they pulled off, I think.
Honestly, I totally agree. I think I agree with you in the fact that I would love to have seen John Hancock's version,
Yeah.
or in some way, shape, or form. When we were speaking with John, obviously he was pretty sort of I think he described it as tragic, basically what kind of happened. But he had, from his point of view, he had a lot of he was in a very, very tricky position, basically, is what he was saying. But to his vision and his version of what that movie was going to be, as you say, you got that beautiful shot of the shark coming into the harbor, and it's dark and it's
Mm.
moody and it's gloomy, and you think, oh wow, this is a certain type of tone. And I would have loved to have seen the Jaws universe explored in that way. I think that would have been amazing. But I actually pitched the idea to him. I said, why don't you maybe pitch a miniseries to Netflix? Because dark and gritty is in fashion right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but also as well, like you say, on the flip side of that, the actual finished movie is it's a miracle, because
Mhm.
I've read Michael Smith's book about the making of the movie, and I've spoken to John, now yourself, Gigi, and a couple of other people. It's a miracle. You've got Carl, as you say, writing as the movie is being made. You've got Jeannot coming in pretty much with no prep, but he had a real background in television, so he was able to move quite quickly, and
He
sometimes he'd
moved,
actually get quite impatient with how
he moved,
slowly things kind of
he,
went.
he moved he moved too quickly. I can't remember Michael Butler almost always saying, "Jono, we don't need to do 400 pages in one day. Slow down, slow down." I do remember that. The other
That'd be
thing
the shortest shoot in history.
from the John Hancock version is I had a better role. I was supposed to be Robert Shaw's son, and the nickname was Sideburns, and they had me grow side.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, and the first shot, I think we shot it, was me on the ferry coming from Chappaquiddick,
Mm,
whistling the sea shanty that he sang in the first one, and I guess that's how you're supposed to put together I was his son. But and David Elliott, who played the mayor's son, he and I were villains in the first version.
yeah.
He dangled Sean over the water, and scared him into you're going to be shark bait and all this. It was nasty. And then when all the kids get together, you gotta get together to survive. Um, and I had a great death scene in the first one. Oh man, it was good. Uh,
Yeah, tell us about that. Did you shoot that in the end?
we shot a version of it. The in the John Hancock version, I was it's still the story still tracked the same. And I was on the raft with all the other kids, and the shark ripped through our boat.
Mm,
And then I was paddling towards shore, and
yeah.
Roy is right there, and he puts his hand out to save me. And suddenly I'm pushed through the water, much like Gary Dubin was in the scene with Swim Eddie Swim, that thing.
Yeah.
And but I'm pushed through the water, and then Roy took my hand and he pulled me out of the water, but only this much of me came out of the water, and
Oh,
the rest of
wow.
it shoot off. And then he throws me back in the water, which is why in the second movie Carl thought it was funny to name me Bob, because in the first movie
Because
I
you
was
bob in the water
Bob.
because there's only half of you left.
Yeah, and
Cole Gottlieb is a genius. I'm telling you, that guy.
I love him. And if you really, I mean, if you really study the work he's done more different genres than almost anybody, and he's great at
Yeah.
all of them. So anyway,
Mm,
um, in the new improved version, I guess, I was same setup, except I was supposed to paddle towards shore on the pontoon of my boat, and then the shark was going to chomp down and take off my from the calf down. That was
mhm.
supposed to be better, And they made molds of my legs. I remember that. And but they ended up deciding they didn't. The ratings board decided that my death would constitute an R rating, certain
Ah,
number of.
okay.
And I kept saying, but wait a minute, you can in a war movie, you can blow up an entire town. There's millions of people, what? And they said, well, we know you people. We don't know the people who died in those war movies. It's like, okay, that was their criteria.
Okay.
Um, so what we ended up doing, I didn't know if I was gonna live or die until I actually saw it in a movie theater. What they filmed me swimming up on the rocks,
Mm,
as a cover, and I, I had to ad lib something there, so I did the thank you, thank you, thank you thing. And
yes.
but in the final shot of the movie, when the camera pulls back, I'm not on that island with all the other kids. If you really look for me, so I must have swum around the back, I guess. But anyway, what we ended up doing is they had a stunt man dressed as me on the pontoon of the boat. They did shoot this.
Mm,
And much like when Marge gets killed, she's here and then the shark comes crashing down and everybody disappears under the water. That's how they shot mine. But I saw the
mm.
dailies of it and I said to Jeannot, that guy doesn't look like me. Why can't I do that? And he said, well, and I said, I want to shoot, well, shoot it with me. So he talked to the producers and David Brown came to me and said, okay, we're going to let you shoot that scene, Billy. I said, oh, good. He said, it'll be the last thing we shoot. I said, what do you mean the last thing we shoot? Why? He said, in case you die. That was eye-opening, but I did it
Yeah.
anyway. So what they did is they put me on the pontoon of the boat. They put ropes around my waist and scuba divers under the water, yanking me under the water as the shark came crashing down on top of me. I could have been killed doing this. It was the stupidest thing I ever did. I'm still glad I did it, but uh, they decided at the last second that my death would make it an R-rated movie, so they used the other footage of me climbing up on the rocks.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
I
said,
personally am glad that Bob lived because I'm a big Bob fan. I
"Oh,
liked
good."
it, and I love it even more now that I understand the meaning behind the name as well. I think that's genius.
They also had my opening scene, which sort of established who I was also cut out of the film because I had a six-pack of beer and I was on my way to the dock to meet the Brebner twins, whoever they were. And I think it was too dirty for they were going for a kid audience, I guess.
Uh,
That
I
was my
think so.
that was my
Yeah,
opening scene, and that's gone. And so a lot of times people send me pictures of, can you sign my autograph? And they send me pictures of Keith Gordon. And I can't in any way.
it sounds like Bob needs his own movie. We need to catch up with Bob, don't we, on Amity? Because he lived, didn't he? Maybe he's still stuck on Cable Junction. Who knows?
Mhm.
They've just forgotten about him. He's still there.
That's right.
It was really interesting that you mentioned that you were originally going to be Quint's son returning to Amity. Had you seen the original Jaws movie
Oh,
before
God, yes.
you had?
God,
What did you think of it?
the scariest movie I'd ever seen. It was my favorite. I sorry, but The Godfather comes first for me. But the second greatest movie of all time, I think. And uh, I remember standing in those ridiculously long lines or wrapped around the block to get into that one. And
Hmm.
I'm from the New Jersey Shore, so and coincidentally, and no relation to me, the first guy that got killed by a shark on the Jersey Shore, which made the national press, was a guy named Van Zandt, and down in I think it was Asbury Park. So, it's very close to me.
Yeah, definitely no relation. And obviously, I mean, again, like you, I think Jaws is just the greatest movie of all time. Obviously, you think it's the second greatest, but obviously
Yeah,
there is someone in that movie who's returning to, well, two people that are returning, well, a few people that are returning to Jaws too, but specifically Roy Scheider.
yeah.
Uh, what was it like working with Roy? Did you get to spend much time with him? Because there was quite a lot of now that we understand why he was in Jaws 2, there was quite a lot of contractual obligation regarding Roy's involvement rather than it being a, hey, I'd love to do it. And then obviously the change in director also had an impact as well because there was a tension between Jeannot and Roy. So what was your experience of working with Roy?
He hated being there. He hated it. He didn't talk to anybody really. He did his job and was very good at that.
Mm.
When he wasn't uh, when he wasn't filming, he would sit by himself on a little lounge chair in his little speedo with one of those sun reflectors under his chin, working on the tan. He was the tannest human being you ever saw in your life. And but he was nice when we talked to him, but he really didn't go out of his way to talk to any of us. Although I take that back. They threw a birthday party for me in December of that year,
Mm.
and he came to that and brought me a Farrah Fawcett puzzle with her poster, her famous poster on the front. He did give me that for my birthday, and I know Keith Gordon worked with him again on All That Jazz. He
Mm.
played the younger version of Roy, and he said he was a completely different guy, and he was the nicest guy in the world, and he was sorry he hadn't been more open with all of us.
Yeah.
But he got screwed out of some good movies, I think, from doing ours. He was supposed to do Deer Hunter, I know that, and he lost that because he had to give him 2 Rs.
Mm.
Um, and it was funny, the very first big scene we all filmed was the Holiday Inn scene, and it's the only time I saw any, like a tantrum on the set. Roy went after Janot, and it was ugly in front of all those extras.
Oh, wow.
I think I think it was a test, honestly, to see what he could get away with, and Janot put him in his place, and it never happened again.
Mm.
And I thought, "Oh, good for you, good for you." But it was scary to the point where I thought, "Uh-oh, are we gonna keep filming or something going on here?"
Yeah.
But, um, but Roy kept to himself, but
Mm.
he did a great job with the movie. So I guess
Yeah,
that's
I think it's a great performance. I mean, given all of the circumstances and everything else, I mean, obviously it just shows what a pro he was, but also a great
yeah.
actor. I think when I was speaking to Gigi, we talked about this a little bit as well. And I think if Roy had been in the movie a little bit more, I think we could have seen a little bit more from him in terms of the PTSD side of what was going on. And I know that that was a theme in John Hancock's original scripts as well. So it was
Yeah.
nice to see that being used in the final version of Jaws 2. And I think it gives a very good, it gives the opportunity for Roy to do a little bit more with the character. And it's good to hear that, obviously, as you say, kept himself to himself, but he was a pro. He did the job, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he was nice, and also that he was a completely different guy when it came to all that jazz, which again he was brilliant in.
He was. I love that movie. And
Yeah.
Lorraine was lovely. She was friendly, fun. Everybody liked her. We
Can you
got
see
along.
my questions? Because literally that was the next question I was about to ask.
Oh, oh, you did Roy's, but I figured you're going to Lorraine next.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Roy. We're going to talk about Lorraine and Murray Hamilton. Yeah.
Yeah, she was great. Really liked her. And Murray Hamilton was a trip. He was fun. The very first day I met him, we all met in the lobby of the Holiday Inn where we were staying. We stayed in the same hotel that we filmed in,
Mm.
and he came up to us. He had a long sleeve sports jacket on, and instead of his hand, he had a lobster claw sticking out of it. And he did this for the entire time he was on the film. Somebody would go to meet him, and he'd stick the lobster hand out for them to shake. You know, and he he came up to us. I was sitting with a bunch of the kids, as they called us, and he said, "I just want to give you one piece of advice. This is your first movie," and a lot of us said, "Yeah." And he said, "They'll kill you, but they won't care as long as they get the shot. Just want you to know that." And he walked away. And I was like, "Wow, there's my introduction to making movies." And he wasn't wrong, by the way. We shot that helicopter scene that gets a lot of flack because that would never happen. Which, according to the movie people, it was documented happening. That's why it was in the film. But they had us for one of the shots. They had us lay on the trampoline to the boat, and they threw the rotors at us from from the helicopter, and we just sat there and um,
Wow, they were metal. They weren't like rubber or anything.
I don't remember them being rubber. I remember getting hit with stuff. And and also
Wow.
when there were no stuntmen driving the boats either. So when it came time for us to smash into each other, we
Yeah,
we
because you guys
smashed
did
into
that for real,
each
didn't
other.
you?
Yeah, yeah. But it was, I mean, I was a kid and it was fun. I was, making movies.
Sounds like a riot. Now let's talk about the mechanical shark, because obviously that's one of the other stars of the movie. Not many
Yeah.
lines, but an important role nonetheless.
He
Uh,
held his own.
yeah, what was it like working with the mechanical sharks? Because in sort of Jaws lore, it's always just a nightmare. But what was your experience of working with the shark?
I don't remember there being that many problems with it. We had as many problems with that as we would when it rained. You just go shoot something else.
Mm,
Uh, we had more trouble with real sharks because the locals did not like having us there, and they there was the pier that came out the back of the Holiday Inn, and then there was another pier next to it. There was nothing else around us. It was the
mm,
hotel and miles of sand. There was no. And now it's all built up, I'm sure. But back then there was nothing for us to even walk to. It was really far away from everything.
yeah.
But there was another pier, and they would fish off that pier, and they decided to have a shark rodeo while we were shooting our movie,
Ah,
chumming the water to try and bring sharks in to, I guess, kill us, I guess. So, uh, and we were stupid enough where the kids were anyway, where the the producers told us, "Don't worry about the sharks. We have scuba divers with dart guns in the water. You know, so if anything comes near you, we'll take care of it." We went, "Oh, okay," and we jumped in the water. Not the brightest thing in the world to do, but we
yeah, Gigi told us a story yesterday about
did.
how she was on a boat and sharks started circling, and instead of being pulled into land, they sent out a bottle of brandy and said, "Don't worry
Yeah,
about it."
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Love that
There
story.
was a lot of brandy being passed around on that movie. You know, we were
Yes.
freezing to death out there too some of the time,
God.
and we had everybody had flasks hidden in the boat somewhere. You know.
It sounds like you guys needed it.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite memory from the shoot at all?
Um, well, let's see. I enjoyed so much of it. I really did. I have one scary event that had nothing to do with the film, but my brother is in Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, Little Steven Van Zandt, and they were out on tour at the same time I was shooting the film. So I get in the bus one day to go to the shuttle bus to take us to the dock scenes where we were filming that. And the assistant director says, Billy, are you related to the musician Van Zandt who died in the plane crash last night? And it's like, this was before cell phones and before the internet, and I don't know what he's talking about. And I
Oh
freaked out.
God.
And I'm calling my parents to try and see, politely, subtly, have you talked to Stephen today? And my mother hadn't. And I found out later, and it's, tragedy for anyway, but the Leonard Skinner band had gone down, and
Mm.
Van Zandt had died, but it was not my brother. But for a while, I thought it was. And Stephen came home from the tour, I think the following week, walked into my parents' house, and there were a bunch of flowers sent by by my parents' friends because they
Oh, of
thought he had
course.
died. And he
Oh my word.
looked at them and went, "That's so small. That's all they thought of me."
The
But
fan's sense of humor.
yeah,
I love it.
but what did I enjoy the most doing? I loved doing the death scene. I just did. I loved filming. The camera crew kept calling me Buster Keaton because I wanted to do my own stunts, and that was fun to do. And the one thing I did not enjoy, I will say this, I was a kid, so you do whatever you're told, and you don't realize you have rights as an actor to do anything. So my grandmother had died over Thanksgiving, and I I had flown home for Thanksgiving just for that weekend, so I wouldn't miss any shooting. And she had died, and they were going to have her funeral on Sunday, and fast. And so I called to say I couldn't come. And my grandmother died. I'll be there in a day or two. Oh, no, no, you have to be here now. We need you to shoot. And I stupidly said, oh, okay. And I missed my grandmother's funeral and flew down there. There's a scene where no, right after they pick up Sean, who's been knocked unconscious, and then they there's a long, long shot. And you see the boats are about this big in the distance.
Is it Michael that was knocked unconscious?
Michael.
Michael,
He's
yes, 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 yes. Okay.
the boats are that big in the background.
Mhm.
That's what I flew back to shoot. They could have put somebody in a clown suit on that boat. Nobody would have known the difference.
I can't believe they've done that to you.
Yeah,
Oh man, that's terrible.
yeah.
What do you think of the finished movie?
I think it's a great sequel. I think unfortunately it's a different tone than the first film. So
Mm,
anybody who loved the first film is expecting that in the second film. But I think they pulled out. I think some of the acting is a little too broad, I guess,
mhm,
um, me included. And a couple scenes I do where I went, oh, that's pretty good. But I think it held its own. I do, and
mm.
I hear from an awful lot of people who really love it, and you can't miss it because it's on. Is it Turner Classic Movies? It's on one channel every 5 minutes. I just know that.
The Jaws movies are on TV somewhere in the
Yeah,
world
yeah,
as we speak, I'm sure. What do you think is the legacy of Jaws 2?
Hmm. Well, that's an interesting question. Well, I've been, with all due respect to Joe Alves and and Lorraine Gary, I'm told the legacy is that it's the last good Jaws film. Yeah, yeah. Um, the it's funny. There's a lot of talk about the missing footage. Not only my death scene, but there are a couple other scenes,
Mm.
and nobody can find it. Nobody can find it. So I keep hoping at some point someone says, "We found the death scene. Let's put it back
We
in. We
we
found your
think we
opening."
found a photograph of it. There is a photograph of someone
Yes,
sort of on a surfboard or bodyboard or something, and the
yeah,
shark coming out from the
right
side.
before the
We'll edit that
cliffhanger.
into the interview. But yeah,
The,
the footage
the,
itself, we've not been able to find
the
anywhere. We'd love to
funny
see
thing,
that though.
the funny thing about that photo is Netflix finally put Jaws 2 on their roster.
They didn't
That's the
use it in the menu, did they?
that's the photo they used to advertise the film. It's not in the movie.
I love it. That's why we love you, Netflix. Your attention to detail.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you think of the sequels after Jaws 2? Did you watch Jaws 3D or Jaws the Revenge, or have you not seen
Of
them?
course I did.
You
Of
did.
course, yeah, of course I did.
What do you
Um,
think?
well, what can I say? I was not a fan. Joe Alves is a good friend of mine. I'm not going to say what I thought. The I think the in general the quality went down and it went further. By the time Lorraine had the shark following her family to the Bahamas, it was like, really, folks. The first movie was all about realism, you know, and the second movie stretched that a little bit, and the third movie, unfortunately, and I don't know this. This is me making something up. I think the budget was slashed on the third movie because the shark is this big in one shot, this big in another shot, this big in another shot, and it's in marine land or something. It's
Sea World, that yeah, that kind of
SeaWorld, yeah.
place. Yeah.
Marine World. I just aged myself a lot. That was long before World. Uh, but I don't remember the third one. I only saw it once, and
Hmm.
the last one, it did have Michael Caine in it, so that was good.
Yeah. Well, Michael Caine is generally he's a sure
There,
bet in most things.
there was
But
supposed to be a different third one because David Brown called me up right after the second movie came out, and for the week and a half, it was the highest grossing sequel of all time until Star Wars came out, and that was the end of that. But he called me up and asked if I wanted to be in Jaws 3 People Zero, which was
hmm.
going to be a National Lampoon spoof of making shark movies, which I never saw the script, but I agreed to be in it, and then it never happened. But I still love the idea of somebody doing that as a film. I think that's a funny idea.
I think
Um,
it would be funny to see. I think um, as part of the official Jaws canon and the franchise, I don't know if it would quite fit, but I'd like to see a spoof shark movie. I mean, there's lots of really crazy ones out there now on streaming services.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are.
Do you
Uh,
have a favorite shark movie outside of the Jaws sort of franchise?
I liked. I'm gonna get the name wrong. I just thought it was really clever for having no money. They made a really good little film. Is it called Open Water?
Open Water, yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah,
with the two divers
stuck in the water.
stranded.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That,
that was
that was
based on
scary.
a true story.
That was
That
scary
was
because again, it was real to me.
yeah.
I'm not go for the ones that are sort of ridiculous. I don't go for them.
Yeah, there are some sort of crazy sort of CGI driven movies like
Yeah,
Sharknado and stuff like that. But I think, yeah, like you say, Open
yeah,
Water was
yeah.
very tense, very real. I think that was shot over something like 4 years as well. It took a long time
All
for them
right.
to make it because they had no money, but it was very, very effective, I thought.
Yeah.
What about the personal legacy of Jaws 2 for you? What was the big impact it had on your life?
Well, for me and for most of the actors in it, we lived off of the residuals for that for a couple of years because we were all starting out as actors and the money was quite good.
Hmm.
And again, we were supposed to do it I had a 4-week contract. I was there 11 months um, because of the two directors and then, rewrites and all that stuff.
Mm.
Um, uh, it's 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 really been fun to the fans have been so good, so great, so loyal. That's been the most fun part for me.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't do a lot of those autograph signing things. Um, I just there's something about them to me that's just I feel like a hooker in the window in Amsterdam. I don't somebody walking past you looking like nah, you know. So, so uh, but the fans have been great, and it's really been fun with that.
Mm.
In terms of, uh, I don't know if it did anything for my career at all. I mean, I've worked nonstop since, but I don't think it's because of that.
Mm.
Uh, and then, and the other thing that I've gotten out of it is I've gotten some really great friends out of it that are still, they're like family to me.
Yeah. That seems to be the legacy at the moment. It seems to be about those friendships and those relationships that have spanned nearly sort of 50 years, which is amazing to see. We see that on our online communities as well. People forging friendships just through the love of not just Jaws 2, but just the Jaws movies in general. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to help facilitate as the Daily Jaws.
Yeah.
So our last question, Billy, and this is probably my
Fast, wow,
favorite.
that was fast. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you've got some fantastic stories, but this is probably one of my favorite questions I like to ask people. What's your 60-second Jaws movie pitch? If you had to, if you were put in charge of the next Jaws movie to be made, what might be your story? What might be your pitch?
Uh, wow. I would honestly go back and try and shoot John Hancock's version of the film. I really would. I still think that would be a great film. I
Yeah,
just do. I would go with that.
great answer.
Okay.
Perfect. Billy, thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Jaws and celebrating the 45th anniversary of Jaws 2. It is customary for me to leave the last word with the guests. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off and say farewell and adieu?
First of all, this was really lovely to do, and thank you for asking me. And I guess I'll see you. I'll see you in the future, all of you. And oh, I do have this. I will do this. This is such a cheesy thing.
Oh,
Here's
God, what
my
is
book.
this?
This is my book.
Get in the car, Jane. Okay.
It's all about the TV shows I worked on. I just happen to have it laying on the
You just
desk here.
happen to have it. It's just strange how those things happen. But
I
what
don't.
we'll do then.
I never keep it there for some reason. Anyway, um, this is great, and if I ever do any of those signings, come visit, folks.
Absolutely. Well, what we'll do is we'll put a link to your book in the description of the video as well, so people can buy it if they wish. Guys, I've been Ross for the Daily Jaws, interviewing Billy Van Sant on the 45th anniversary of Jaws 2. As always, I'll drink to your legs and I'll bid you farewell and adieu. If you love Jaws, sharks, and shark movies, then please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and also visit our website, thedailyjaws.com, for all the latest Jaws news and stories.